But is it who you are? It may not be like some people are really good listeners, but it's a tactic. It's not really them. They understand that there's a benefit attached to being a good listener, but they're not really passionate about listening to you. And they're great salesmen. What is sales? Sales is essentially making you believe that my idea is your idea, because you're much more likely to follow your own idea than you are to follow my idea, because the money makes you more of you. So maybe when you were poor, you were actually being 60% of who you really were or who you really are. Now that you're actually rich and they're meeting you as a rich person, perhaps they're getting 85% of who you really are, which is more of who you really are. So if they're rocking with you now, perhaps they're really rocking with you because they have to buy into more of you today than they would have had to buy into, let's say, before you were successful, when you were operating at 60% capacity. But in person, I can read your energy. One, you don't look the same, chances are, as you look online. Two, I'm not going to have the same interaction with you in person as I did virtually. If you can watch that just on a clip, if you see a clip uploaded to any platform, it's all chopped, right? You can chop out all your like, long pauses. Everything is back to back to back to back to back. That doesn't really happen that way in real life. If you have a selfie and you post that selfie on IG, yeah, that's the 86th picture that you post on IG that looks good to you. In real life, if I were to stand next to you and watch you throughout that process, take the pictures, I'll be able to learn more about you than I would if I just saw this one picture that you post on IG. What do we see? The one picture you post on IG. That's curated. It's a curated reality. And because of that, it's not reality.
Besides journaling, what are some other ways to check in on your own mental health?
Therapy. Having someone who is a qualified, certified, licensed professional to evaluate you over a relatively extended period of time. Because it's hard to see your blind spots. It almost requires it requires you really being able to confront yourself and see yourself. It's like practice at having out of body experiences. And that can be very challenging for people. So therapy is important for that reason. Also asking around. The people that you spend a lot of your time around, what are they seeing? What are your friends seeing? Have they noticed a shift in you? What is your spouse seeing? Has she noticed a shift in you? He noticed a shift in you? Your parents, whoever the people that you spend the majority of your time around, the 5 or 10 people that you spend the majority of your time around, or the people who have known you the longest, what are they seeing you? Because aside from journaling, it's not always easy for people to check in with themselves. Typically, assistance is required. Journaling works really well because you can see what you're writing down. But as long as it's in your head, only in your head, you can kind of psych yourself out about it. So oftentimes, aside from journaling, leaning on your community is also a valid way, in my experience. And if you're spiritual or if you believe in a higher power, then prayer is very important also. Especially if you pray out loud. Over time, you ask yourself, what's been consistent in my prayers? And also checking your mannerisms. Right? Where have I been? Have I been taking good care of myself? Have I been eating properly? What are my sleeping habits like? What am I interested in giving my attention to? Am I focused on self-development, or am I focused on porn? Am I utilizing my resources to the best of my ability? Let's say financially. Or am I blowing my money more so lately? Your actions will also tell you what your mindset is like over a particular amount of time.
Why do you think so many people have such a difficult time self-assessing?
Because it's painful. And it takes practice. It's easier to look outward. So it's easier to pay attention to what's happening in the world around you, not the one within you. And now there's so many more distractions. So if you're not careful, it's easy not to allocate any time to self-reflection. And also thinking is a byproduct of life for a lot of people. And when thinking is a byproduct of life, it becomes a blame game very easily. Not always. Some people don't allow it to become that. But in a lot of instances, it can become that very easily. Because rather than paying attention to what's happening internally, the objective is to constantly look outward and see what the reasons are. A lack of teaching why it's important. Like society doesn't necessarily teach us to look within. You have some people in society saying that. You have some people in society teaching that. But society as a whole doesn't really teach its people to look within. Everything is about what's happening in the environment. So it's not really something that people think to do. A lot of people don't think to do self-reflection. And if they self-reflect, perhaps it's, again, about the environment, not really about them. It's more about where they spend their time, who do they spend their time with, what has that led to, and etc. Less about why do I spend my time there? What attracts me to that? Right? If I'm attracted to it, then why am I attracted to it? Why don't I do something else? What am I missing out on because I'm over here doing this thing? Oftentimes it's just, I like this. I like this and that's it. But it's not why. And we also live in a society that justifies you not having to think about why. You like it, you like it. And if there's no one challenging you to try to figure that out any further, and you can't justify it for yourself as to why you should think about it any further, why would you think about it any further?
Apparently, well, apparently, I don't really see like sensitive towards it. Men are very lonely these days.
Apparently, men are very lonely these days. Mhm.
Is that maybe due to a lack of purpose?
Could be. But it also seems like people are much more lonely these days. Because real interactions are not the same anymore. Most interactions are, not most, because I don't really have any statistics to prove that. But a lot of our encounters happen virtually now. So it's not just men that are lonely. There are a lot of people in general that are lonely.
It's funny because I don't know where I heard about this, but they say that if you connect like through a screen, your brain doesn't know the difference.
Your brain doesn't know the difference.
Between connecting with people in real life or connecting with people through a screen.
It's not about your brain. Emotions live in your body. Your body is what holds memory, not your brain. Your brain can process the events that took place and etc., but the emotion that's attached to that lives in your body. So connection is about emotion. Interaction is mental. So yeah, you can psych your brain out and the brain doesn't know what's real and what isn't real. And that's oftentimes how people reprogram their subconscious. But as far as the emotion attached to it, there's a different energy attached to physically interacting with someone and virtually interacting with someone. Virtually is more curated and it's attractive to people because it's curated so they can control their persona a bit more. But in person, I can read your energy. Right? One, you don't look the same, chances are, as you look online. Two, I'm not going to have the same interaction with you in person as I did virtually because the virtual experience was curated. You can watch that just on a clip. If you see a clip uploaded to any platform, it's all chopped. Right? You can chop out all your like, long pauses. Everything is back to back to back to back to back. That doesn't really happen that way in real life, right? If you have a selfie and you post that selfie on IG, yeah, that's the 86th picture that you post on IG that looks good to you. In real life, if I were to stand next to you and watch you throughout that process, take the pictures, I'll be able to learn more about you than I would if I just saw this one picture that you post on IG. What do we see? The one picture you post on IG. That's curated. It's a curated reality. And because of that, it's not reality. is you constructing a fantasy and presenting it as if it's reality, but it really isn't. So if I were in a room with you, you can't do that. I'm going to see all the poses that went wrong. I'm going to see the fact that the lighting wasn't right on the first 20 pictures. I'm going to see all those flaws that you try to hide by the time you get to the 86th picture. Now, if we take that concept and apply it across the board when it comes to dealing with someone in social interactions, virtually it's curated. I see what you want me to see. I hear what you want me to hear. But in reality, it's different. Why? Because you don't know what I'm going to say to you in reality. When you see me in this room, you don't know how my energy is going to coincide with yours. You don't know if we're going to have chemistry. But online, you can act like we have the best chemistry because really there's nobody in that room with you. It's just you and you. But in person, when our energies come together, do they clash? And if they clash, how do you respond to that? Or do you respond? Perhaps you react. Perhaps you panic. And now that sweet, cool, calm, collected, or whatever persona you were trying to project across the screen is not really what we're feeling in this very moment. Why? Because it's not a curated experience. You can try to curate it. Some people are really good at responding in a very controlled manner, but their energy says something else. Their words and their body language, all of that is perfected. They're practiced at that. But their energy says something else. So it takes away from that curated experience that they've created virtually. And now we have an actual interaction with one another where we can attach emotion to it in the physical. And that's what determines whether we make a real connection or not. Otherwise, it's just my idea of what I'm seeing you do online. It's almost like an art piece. And based on who you ask, they're going to get something different from it. Aside from that, it's empty. I get to imagine how you would be in real life because I don't really have any real context for it. So am I really falling in love with you? Or am I falling in love with this character I've created in my mind based on a little bit of information that you've given me about this character that you've created virtually?
I'm glad you never had to do no online dating.
I don't think anybody has to do online dating.
No. But you never even out the game.
Online dating was around when I was single, my brother. I haven't done it, but it was there. It was an option.
That's very interesting, but it's not a topic today.
Why not?
Because it's neither about career nor life.
Dating is about life and career. Because if you're not making a certain amount of money, perhaps that person is not interested in you. Maybe that person only dates doctors. They come from a family of doctors. They want to date doctors. They're impressed by doctors. If you're not a doctor, you're not on their radar. finance is amongst the top 2 reasons why marriages end. So dating and what you do for a living is very important and tied very closely to career and life.
If finances are that important to dating, how should you go about both? How would you set up your finances for dating? Let's start with that.
After you set up your finances for yourself and for your life, meaning what you want to do with your life over the next 5 years. If dating is a part of that, it depends on what level of priority you want to give dating. For some people, they don't have any interest in dating over the next 3 years. There are people who are currently worth $200,000 and they don't want to go on any dates until they have a net worth of more than $1 million. There are some people with an income of $200,000. They don't want to go on any dates or entertain anyone in that way romantically until they have an income of at least $1 million. They're not having sex. They're not going on any dates. They're not online doing a back and forth flirting or whatever. They're not doing any of that. Super focused. Patrick Bet-David was one of those people. Had a decent income. I think he went like 17 months or something like that. As a young man, mind you. So there's some people that are super focused on their career for themselves. And they make sacrifices. To help drive them toward whatever goal, whatever financial goal they have for themselves. But it depends on you and what your priorities are. Some people are interested in starting a family in their latter 20s. They may have a very different list of priorities and how they actually structure their lives financially than a person who's interested in having a child in their late 30s, or a person who has already had a child, a teenage parent. They may look at their finances. All 3 of those groups look at their finances very differently, chances are. So it really depends on what's important to you and how dedicated you are to whatever that thing is. Tony Robbins supposedly was making $38,000 a year. Found out his wife was pregnant, and the very next year he was making $1 million a year. So it depends. Depends on what you want for yourself. That's what's going to determine how you structure your life and how you structure your finances. And some people are very intense. Some people are not intense at all.
Yeah, you believe that you're missing out on potential connections when you take yourself completely out of the dating pool for an extended period of time.
I think you miss out on everything that you take yourself completely out of within that time frame. But it's a matter of priorities. There's an opportunity cost attached to everything that you do. What's more important to you? If it's important to you to be in the mix and have a little bit of this and have a little bit of that and have a, then that's how your life is going to be. It's going to be a little bit of everything. But does that give you the life that you want to have? Sounds like a dabbler. Because it changes over time, right? So it's hard to gain context. You're doing a little bit of this, a little bit of that. You don't really do anything. What's the potential connection? What is it connecting you to? What do you do? I heard a conversation today. Someone was talking about building a team, and someone asked them, "What do you need a team for? You have a business. Your business is about creating content. What do you need a team for? You need a team to put the phone onto the tripod and press record? You need a team for that?" This is kind of that. It's kind of like, okay, well, we're missing out on potential connections to do what exactly? What do you do that you need connections for?
Fulfill the need for connection.
Yeah, but you can do that in a lot of ways. You can pursue your passion and fulfill a need for connection because you're going to meet people along the way that can help you pursue your passion. Why not pursue your passion and try to connect with people just for the sake of connecting with people? That may not actually be beneficial in the long term. I'm sure there's some benefits to it, but is it actually going to get you what you want in your life? Now, if all you want is connection, then okay. But if you want to connect in a certain way based on a certain belief system that brings about a certain outcome in the world, okay, then your connections have some guidance. Then you have a little bit more structure. Otherwise, you're connecting, hopefully, for the sake of connecting. If you take yourself out of the dating pool, for example, that doesn't that doesn't mean, well, excuse me, not the dating pool. If you take yourself offline, meaning you're not on Hinge or whatever other ones there are, then you're just not online trying to market yourself as single. You can bump into somebody at the grocery store. You can bump into somebody at the library. You can bump into somebody on the train. You can bump into somebody at a party. Doesn't mean you're not in a dating pool. Just means you're not online dating. And if you are taking yourself out of the dating pool, are you missing out on dating? Yes. But what are you gaining in? I'm gaining in buying my first house. I'm gaining in starting my first business. I'm gaining in getting my health in order. I'm gaining in re-establishing a relationship between my mother and myself. I'm gaining in ... What's more important to you? Because you only got 24 hours in a day. What is the real value that you're getting from this dating game? Are you dating to date? Or are you looking for a real partner in life? Relative to how many other things you have on your plate and how old you are, should that be a priority for you right now? What is the real value that you're getting out of it? Only the person can decide what's the right answer for them. I think whatever it is that you decide to do and you actually pursue, you lose the opportunity of pursuing something else. So yes, if you take yourself out of the dating pool, you lose the opportunity of connecting with people romantically for the time being. But that may not be a bad thing. It may actually be a great thing for some.
And once you're ready to date, how do you present yourself as a concernable bachelor?
There's no right answer to that.
How do you, that's the thing though, when you are looking for a partner who is truly interested in who you are, not about what she can gain from you, what she, your accomplishments are really for you. That shouldn't be more incentivized to date before you reach your goal.
Why?
To see who's really along the journey with you and who's not.
Why does someone have to be along the journey with you?
How
Like
you-
before you become successful? Because you becoming successful is only going to make you more of who you are. So if she's with you for who you are, you're going to become more of that when you become successful. And that's also a journey. It's not like you become successful and then the journey is over. You're still living, hopefully. There's still more life. Now you have to experience life as someone who's successful. That in itself is an opportunity for you to be reintroduced to yourself. You may not even like what you see. Because trying to become rich is a different experience than being rich. Or making it, or being successful. You're not the person that you're required to be in order to accumulate success is a different person from the standards of actually being a person who's successful in maintaining that success and growing that success. So the demands that you put on the people around you also change. And the more successful you become, the more you become yourself. So whoever's really riding with you, one can argue with that perhaps they should ride with you that much more. And if they meet you when you're rich, perhaps they actually really like you. Because the money makes you more of you. So maybe when you were poor, you were actually being 60% of who you really were or who you really are. Now that you're actually rich and they're meeting you as a rich person, perhaps they're getting 85% of who you really are, which is more of who you really are. So if they're rocking with you now, perhaps they're really rocking with you. Because they have to buy into more of you today than they would have had to buy into, let's say, before you were successful, when you were operating at 60% capacity.
And how do you gauge whether they are interested in more of you or more of the finances?
That depends on the person. Different people have different tricks. And even if different people are using the same trick, they're using it differently because they're different people. So that's something that we deal with on a case-by-case basis. But after having a certain amount of experiences, hopefully you become a better judge of character and your radar improves. And also you become less attached to the mistakes that you make in the learning process. But as you become more successful, hopefully one of the things that a person learns is to protect themselves at all times, especially their finances. So while you're learning and to become a better judge of character, you don't lose a large portion of what you've developed to help you get to know yourself better, which in this case would be money. But if we're looking for people to not be attracted to nice things, that money can buy, perhaps that's an opportunity for us to reevaluate our expectation or our definition of what a real one is. Because everyone has a definition or an idea of what they believe to be nice or a great life. And we all choose partners based on that. Some some base it on the non-physical, the intangible. Others base it on the tangible, the physical realm, the physical world, materialistic goods. But we all have an idea. We all have an agenda that we're trying to fulfill to a large extent. Sometimes we get blindsided by someone's beauty as a human that redirects our lives in a way that transforms us to an extent. But a lot of people have an idea, a lot of people have an agenda that they're trying to meet, whether they do it with you or without you. In a lot of instances, it doesn't matter because they had an idea of the things that they wanted before they met you. And today, they don't necessarily feel like, or we don't necessarily feel like we need each other in order to acquire anything. It's a nice to have, but we don't need it. But if we're looking for someone to discard their interest in nice things and a concept of community, meaning a group of people working toward a common goal, perhaps we can take the opportunity to reevaluate that and see if that makes sense. For example, if I'm interested in living in $100 million house, perhaps I want to date someone who's aligned with that vision, or at least doesn't work against me. If I'm meeting women as a heterosexual male who are not aligned with that vision, who actually want the reverse or the exact opposite of what I'm saying I want, and I decide that I'm not attracted to that person, perhaps that's not so surprising. If I meet someone who's all in, they have the same goal, they have the same vision, they have the same drive, and it turns out that I become attracted to that person, perhaps that's also not so surprising. Do they like me for me? Time will tell. Was it me, the person that I am, that attracted them to me? To some degree, yes, and chances are to some degree, no. That's why it's important to express yourself accurately. When you see people and they're dressed a certain way, they drive a certain car, they eat a certain food, they wear their hair a certain way, whatever the case may be, and you ask them why, and they say, because I'm expressing myself. What are you saying exactly? I get that you're expressing yourself, but what are you trying to express? What message are you trying to express? That's important because the more accurate that message is, meaning the more accurately aligned that message is with who you are, with representing who you are, with shouting out to the world who you are, what you're interested in, where you're going, the more likely you are to attract people to you that are interested in who you are. But if you dress like A, but you actually are like B, and you attract a bunch of A's and not so much B's, it makes sense. Doesn't mean you can't meet someone who's into you. Doesn't mean you can't have a partner where y'all both dressed and act like A, even though y'all both really are B's. Doesn't mean that. It just means if you attract a lot of A's, don't be surprised. And if you attract a B, sometimes that's even confusing. Because you're a B, but you're acting and dressing like A. You meet a B who's acting and dressing like A, but you don't know. You feel like she's a B or he's a B, but because they're acting and dressing like A, I'm not sure yet. And that's how they feel about you. While on the other side, if you meet an A, they're looking at you like, oh, you're an A, and you're like, no, I'm a B. You also looking at them like, you look like an A, you're acting like an A, but are you a B like me? You don't know. So you have to experience it a lot of the times. And as you go, you become a better judge of character. So one day down the line, you can say, yeah, she's acting or he's acting or dressing like an A, but I know that they're a B. And they're looking at you and they know the same thing. Or what can happen is you can have enough of those experiences to understand perhaps I'm projecting myself into the world in a way that's not consistent with who I am. Because if I'm presenting this to the world, but I'm not really that person behind closed doors, then I'm sending mixed messages to the universe. Perhaps that's the reason why I'm getting this mixed reaction from the universe. But maybe if I align myself, making sure that my expression is consistent with who I am and what I'm about, where I'm going, and what I'm interested in, there'll be less friction in my life. But it's up to the person to make that decision. How much does discipline play a role in dating? Discipline is pretty much everything in dating. If you, how often are you going to be online looking for a date? How how interested are you in bettering yourself for the dating scene, improving yourself for the dating scene, improving your chances of becoming a qualified candidate to date for anyone? or at least for the women that you believe yourself to be interested in dating, or the men that you believe yourself to be interested in dating? How much time are you going to allocate to that? How much resource, how many resources are you going to allocate to that? How disciplined are you going to be at manifesting that? When you finally land a date, how disciplined are you at following through on what you said you would do? If you say, I'm going to pick you up at your place at 7:30, how disciplined are you at being on time? How disciplined are you at practicing good hygiene? How disciplined are you at being a good listener? If you're on a date with someone, you're trying to learn about them. How disciplined are you at actually learning about someone other than yourself? How disciplined are you at paying attention to detail? How disciplined are you at being able to read the room? Is the date going well? How's she feeling? Maybe how's he feeling? Is he feeling a little bit uncomfortable? Is she a little bit shy? Is she nervous? Is he embarrassed by something that I may have said? How disciplined are you at being observant? How disciplined are you at the small things? Pulling out somebody's chair, opening the door, making sure that there's water at the table, making sure you pay attention to the drink that they order. For someone who's dating, if there was someone that I cared about that was going on a date and they asked me for advice as to how they should conduct themselves on a date, I would tell them, perhaps I would tell them, focus on being respected more than you focus on being liked, which is counterintuitive in a dating scene, because you want the person to like you. Right? You want the person to respect you and like the fact that they respect you more than they like you. Because then there's the foundation to create healthy boundaries on both sides. And make sure that you're not pretending to be someone that you aren't in order to receive a false sense of significance from someone that you don't know. And present yourself in the most honest way possible. Going back to your expression. What are you expressing in how you present yourself? What are you saying with how you present yourself? Before you speak, what have you said? If a person just looked at you, just had the opportunity to monitor your actions, and only focus on the aesthetic version of you, what is being communicated? Make sure that message that's being communicated is as honest as possible and as clear as possible.
Sometimes it seems though that a lot of men that just don't seem to care about very little get very much done in the dating scene.
A lot of men who don't seem to care about very little, or
Who seem to care about very little.
get a lot done in a dating scene. Perhaps that's because the men who seem like they care about very little are not forcing it. It's easier for that person to feel relaxed and Pay attention to the person that's in front of them. Be present. If you don't care about very much, it's less distraction. You can be present. That's cute for dating. Maybe not so much in an actual relationship, because life is dynamic. Why would you want to be with someone who doesn't really care about very much? Just in caring about one single person, there's a multitude of things to care about. So imagine someone who wants to start a family. What morals are you going to help us instill into our children if you don't care about very many things? What example are you going to be for our children if you don't really care about very many things? How can you ever be a leader of this family if you don't care about very many things as a man? How can you help to make this house a home if you don't care about very many things as a woman? A lot of men talk a lot about, what they're doing at work, and a lot of women nowadays talk about that as well. But it's not easy to run a household. It's not easy to make a house a home. That's a very layered experience. That's a very layered obligation. How can you actually do a good job at that if you don't care about very many things? So, in the dating scene, it's cool. If you just want to date and you aren't really looking for anything serious, if you're looking for something casual and just looking for a fun time, then cool. But for someone who's looking for a life partner, chances are they're looking for substance. And if you don't care about very many things, how much substance can you really have? So in a dating world, yeah, the guy, for example, who doesn't seem to care about anything, who's super chill and able to be present, they're likely to make a person feel comfortable. For someone who's interested in a life partner, perhaps they're also likely to make that person feel disinterested.
I find it very funny. It was this, not funny, interesting. That was this Jordan Peterson lecture. I think they got asked about like the archetype of the bad boy. I don't know if you've seen it. Because the bad boy portrays a lot of the traits that seem to be a lot of traits related to competence. Shoulders back. Speak with a lot of intent.
Mm-hmm.
Confident.
Mm-hmm.
Very not needy.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of young women are drawn to the bad boy.
Mm-hmm.
And as they get older, they learn that these are not the type of people to build a life with.
Mm-hmm.
But still, it's like I feel like every generation has to relearn that. Like go through that themselves instead of that being like overall like general knowledge.
Yeah.
I just thought that was interesting.
It is.
Because I'm not really a bad boy. But I do sometimes see like, alright, are there any traits that that I can implement somehow with still being a good, genuine person?
Well, if you want to be genuine, Perhaps you don't want to implement any traits that you don't currently have.
So in the case of, like, let's say you're not a good listener, then what?
Then you're not a good listener.
That's just that. Don't work on that, or don't.
I'm not saying don't work on that, but if you really care to be a good listener, then you'll work on it.
That's what I'm saying too, with the archetypes. Like,
But you have to genuinely care. And if you genuinely cared, you would be a good listener. You can genuinely want to be something that you aren't. But perhaps, and it would be nice, there's some benefits that come along with actually being that. But perhaps that would serve as a disadvantage to you internally because you don't actually enjoy that. It's a nice idea, but it's not genuinely who you are. It's a genuine fantasy. It's a genuine desire. Right? Maybe for the time being. But it's not really who you are. You're not a good listener. It's one thing to be, okay, maybe I'm a courteous person. And some would argue that being a good listener is part of being considerate, part of being a courteous person. Okay. But there are multiple ways to be a courteous person. It's not just being a good listener. If you want to be a good listener, and that's really what you want, that's really what you desire, then it would, but is it who you are? It may not be, like some people are really good listeners, but it's a tactic. It's not really them. They understand that there's a benefit attached to being a good listener, but they're not really passionate about listening to you. They're passionate about getting what they want from you, and they're great salesmen. What is sales? Sales is essentially making you believe that my idea is your idea. Because you're much more likely to follow your own idea than you are to follow my idea. That's all sales is. So I'm listening to you to see where I can insert my idea in a way that makes you feel like it's your idea. At the beginning of a conversation, I'm starting to plant seeds. By the end of the conversation, you say exactly what I want you to say, and I say, yeah, that's a great idea. You should do that. And I put a lot of energy behind that, and I reinforce that idea. And the next thing you know, you're doing it. But I wanted you to do that. I just didn't say it vividly. That's sales. Some people listen for that reason. They don't listen because they genuinely care about what you're talking about. Are they truly good listeners? Yes. Are they genuinely good listeners? No. One is, do they really have the skill of listening well? Yes. They have learned this skill. They had a desire to learn the skill and they executed on learning that skill. Does it align with their character? Meaning, if there was no benefit in it for them, would they still care to listen to what you were saying? If they had nothing to sell you, would they still care to listen to you? No. So something can be true, but it's not genuine. So if you were genuinely a good listener, or genuinely cared to be a good listener, you would be a good listener. But instead, you genuinely may be a person that wants to get your point across. And knowing that the only way for me to really get my point across is for you to believe my point is your point, I listen to you very well so I can figure out how to do that. But not because I genuinely am a good listener, because I really don't care about what you're talking about. This conversation is a means to an end. It's a way for me to get you what I want you, get you to do what I want you to do. Not a way for me to really listen to you. So it's not genuine.
So let's say you're genuinely not a hygiene person. You're genuinely not, you don't care, genuinely. How would you then, because a lot of people say like dating is really like trying to be the best version of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Or like life really.
Mm-hmm.
But how you present yourself is that things that you lack. So you should just disregard them or should you work on them? If that's not genuinely who you are, i.e. hygiene.
I think that decision is up to the person. What's important is to understand the difference between what's genuine and what isn't. How you want to exist in the world, how you want to show up in the world, is a decision for you to make. It's not a decision for anybody else to make. But what someone else could do to assist you is to help you understand the options more clearly so that you can make more of an informed decision. How a person decides to show up is how they decide to show up. And what the internet has shown us, mainly social media, is that there is no normal. We knew that intuitively before, but the internet has provided data for that. What does it mean for there not to be a normal? It means that there's no longer a taboo. What does it mean for there to no longer be a taboo? Whatever that thing was that you thought was so odd and so weird and was a thing that nobody would ever be interested in or no one should ever be interested in, you now understand and accept the fact that other people are interested in those things. Now that we understand that there's really no taboo, because there's really no normal, we understand that your tribe is out there. Whatever it is that you're interested in, whether you shower, you don't shower, you shave, you don't shave, you get manicures, pedicures, you don't get manicures, pedicures, you let your hair grow freely, you don't let your hair grow freely. Some people don't let their hair grow at all. Whatever it is that you're interested in, there's a tribe out there that's interested in that same thing. The objective is probably not for you to change unless you want to change. And whatever you want to change into, however you want to change, there's a tribe out there that does that thing too. But if you don't want to change, there's a tribe out there waiting for you. The only objective is for you to find that tribe. And that's for everything.